Hello folks, it's the Pace Chaser again. Welcome to another one of my videos. This is another one of the model reviews that I do from time to time. We'll look at some of the older diecasts that are available on the second-hand market. And today we've got the Corgi Original Omnibus Company OOC AEC Regent 2 with Weymann body. And I've got two versions to look at, the Grimsby Cleethorpes one on the left there and the London Transport one. And these are actually the same bus, not just the same type, but they're both registration HGC 225. Corgi modelled it twice. I'll get the camera to focus, which I can't. Oh, there we go. Yeah, Corgi modelled it twice in different stages of its career. So we'll talk about the casting in general, and then we'll talk about the history of the rail bus, and I'll have a look around the model. We'll have a detailed look at the Grimsby one, and I'll have a look at the London one a bit later on as well. So this was one of the earliest castings that Corgi OOC did. There were 20 releases, released between July 1995 and February of 2010. 19 of those were individual buses, and then one was in a set with a Bristol L single decker. By the standards of later ones, it's a fairly crude casting, but as you can see, it doesn't have flush glazing. The glazing is a single unit on the upper deck and a single unit on the lower deck that just slots into the casting. So it's not flush glazed, unlike a lot of the later ones. You've got to remember though that at the time these were released, they were quite revolutionary. You know, if you go back to the sort of 80s, if you wanted a bus for your model railway layout, 00 model railway, you basically were repainting dinky toys that were, you know, to an approximate scale and weren't very detailed at all. So when EFE and Corgi Original Omnibus Company released their range of 4mm scale buses, it really was a game changer. If you look at these from a normal viewing distance, they look quite reasonable. They look pretty good, to be fair. It's only when you get closer you realise that they're not flush glazed and things, but it's not immediately obvious. So as I say, we've got two examples to look at. We've got catalogue number 97814. That was the initial release of this type of vehicle in July 1995, and that's done in the livery of London Transport, the country area, hence it's green and cream, not red. And then we've got catalogue number 40405, Grimsby Cleethorpes Transport, released in February 1997. Now, when the original Omnibus Company range, and indeed the EFE range, came out, they didn't quite know how many to produce. So this London Transport version, catalogue 97814, there were no fewer than 11,000 of them produced. They absolutely flooded the market. They're still really commonplace nowadays. By 1997, they'd kind of got the hang of it a little bit. So there were only 3,400 released of these Grimsby Cleethorpes ones. So the rail bus HGC 225, as I said, AEC Regent 2 with Weymann body. It was delivered to London Transport as fleet number STL 2692 in February 1946. The STL class encompassed various different types, or a number of different variations, should I say, of the AEC chassis. Basically in the 1930s, the London Transport ordered some four-wheeled double-deckers that were known as short type, or ST, and some six-wheeled ones that were known as long type, or LT for short. And then in the 1930s, the construction and use regulations were changed so you could have longer four-wheelers. So they got some of the longer length four-wheel vehicles. They were longer than the STs but shorter than the LTs. So they called them the STL class, short type lengthened is what it stood for. Most of them had bodywork by London Transport themselves, built at Chiswick Works, but just after the war the country area needed some new buses. Chiswick were busy rebuilding and refurbishing earlier STLs, so they hadn't got the capacity to build any new ones. So London Transport ordered 20 conventional vehicles with Weymann bodies of the type that people outside London were buying. And they got 20 Weymann-bodied AEC Regents that they put in the STL class, and they were delivered in 1946. As I said, this one February 1946. They were delivered to Watford and Luton. HGC 225, STL 2692 was delivered new to Watford. It transferred to Grays in 1953 in Essex, and then it was withdrawn along with the rest of them in 1955. As they were non-standard, there were only 20 of them. London Transport withdrew them quite early, but they realised that they would be attractive to other people, and they were sold to various municipal operators around the country. A number of them were sold to Grimsby Corporation including HGC 225. It became Grimsby Corporation, fleet number 47, and it was sold to them via the dealer Norths of Leeds in August 1955. In January 1957, Grimsby Corporation and Cleethorpes Corporation combined their transport departments together. They had one between them, jointly administered, that was known as Grimsby Cleethorpes Transport, and that is the condition that we find the other model in. Still as fleet number 47, but in the livery of Grimsby Cleethorpes Transport. The bus was withdrawn in January 1968. Grimsby expected a full service life from their vehicles. Obviously it was 22 years old at the time. So yeah, January 1968 was withdrawn by Grimsby, and it was sold for preservation, and it's still preserved today is the rail vehicle back in the livery of London Transport in the green and cream with the brown roof that you can see there. So we're going to have a look round the casting. As I say, I'll use the Grimsby one because it's not attached to its box anymore. So we start at the front. The front dome and the windows are pretty decent shape. They look pretty much like the original. There is a bit of overpainting. I don't know if you can see that at the bottom of the window there. The paint's a little bit thick and it's made a bit of a ridged effect, which does detract a little bit from the appearance. Panel line cast in there. The destination blind is printed on. As you can see, the bus had its blind area rebuilt during the course of its life, and that's why it's printed on, so they can do the different variations of that. Come down, the Weymann body on these buses had quite a small driver's windscreen, and that's replicated there. The panel line underneath it is cast in as well, and the radiator looks pretty reasonable. It's not as good as later releases where it owes more probably to the toys of the 1980s than it does the later models, but it looks pretty decent. And the headlights again look a little bit toy-like. They're not quite up to the standard of the later releases, but they're still pretty good. It looks fairly reasonable overall. Registration plate as it should be hung underneath the radiator there, and that looks pretty nice. We'll go round to the near side. The side of the bonnet on these was very angular, and that's well modelled. Wheel arch area looks pretty good. Again, the overall shape and size of it is pretty decent. The lack of flush glazing is noticeable. It does make it look quite chunky. I don't know if you can see there, the opening windows are just on the moulding, on the window moulding. Some of the later releases towards the 2010s had that picked out in silver just to make it stand out a bit more. But these early releases, both of these have just got the, it's just a line on the moulding that you can just about see. If I hold it up to the light, you can see it better. So overall it looks pretty decent, pretty reasonable. Again, it's not up to the standard of later die-cast, but we don't expect it to be, as I say, it was an early release in the series. The rear wheel arch with the sort of flared out rear part of it there, modelled nicely. And if you can see there at the bottom, the characteristic flaring out with the bodywork, it curves outwards. That was a Weymann characteristic, and that is nicely modelled. We go into the platform area. You can see that the texture of the floor is modelled. The staircase is all in blue there. If you take one apart to repaint it, that does look a lot better for being repainted in more accurate colours. And you can just about see the step up into the lower saloon there. We'll have a look at the interior in a little bit. Go around to the back again, you've got the characteristic flaring outwards of the bottom of the back there, the Weymann characteristic. Again, the shape of the window is affected by the paint. It is a little bit thick, and again it's formed a little bit of a ridge in there that just detracts a little bit from the shape of the lower deck window. Destination blind printed on again. As you can see, in the London Transport days it didn't have one, but Grimsby had fitted a number blind on the back, which is represented by printing. And then you've got the two-part upper deck window there. Again, the rear dome shape, pretty decent, looks fairly accurate. And the lights and registration plate just printed on there. Some nice detail in there with the seating capacity and things like that. Round to the offside again, the flare out of the body side done at the bottom there. Something I didn't mention on the near side was the lifeguard rail there, which is reasonably modelled. Quite solid as well, which is good to see. It's, you know, you'd struggle to snap that one off. I'm sure I could manage it if I put my mind to it, but yeah, it's quite solid. As you can see, this bus is leaning back slightly. It's but that's quite characteristic of the rail things. I'm not quite sure what's caused it on this model, but the rail ones didn't always seem to sit level. looking at photographs of them, so that does add a little bit to the realism of it. To be fair, the driver's step and things will probably benefit from being picked out in some silver paints, but again, the detailing isn't too bad. Not much to report on the roof apart from the panel lines there. Casting as you would expect. And if we flip it over, you've got a basic representation of some of the chassis detailing. Not an awful lot. Again, this was an early release, so there wasn't a lot of detailing on them. And then we go into the interior. It is quite nicely done. You struggle to see it really because of the lighting. Trying to get some light into it. It's all done in one colour. In this case, green, which is a reasonable estimate for how it would have been. So we'll have a quick look at the London Transport one. Just take the top of the box off so that we can see it. Again, it's exactly the same casting that we've just seen. Just have a look at the finishing on it. The depot codes and plates there, modelled. The wheels I didn't really mention. You can see them a bit better on this one in the colour. The green colour stands out a little bit more. They're quite nicely moulded. Some good detailing on there. Again, everything detail printed on there. Fleet numbers nicely modelled on the cab side. And just have a look at the roof there. I'm assured by the website Ian's Bus Stop, which I've used to get some notes about the STLs. A really good website, recommend it. But I'm assured by that this livery is correct for when they were new. The bus is preserved in a later version of it where the cab side there is green. So the green goes vertically upwards along there, and that area is all green. And it's preserved in that condition. Most of the photographs I've seen of these vehicles have that livery, but apparently when they were delivered they were in this livery with the cream cab side, so it is apparently authentic. For some reason the interior on this one is moulded in red or a reddy brown colour, so I'm not quite sure which is correct. Obviously it's the same bus, so you would expect it to have the same coloured interior really. I don't think Grimsby did that much interior refurbishment on them when they bought them. One nice feature of this London one as well is that the painting of the roof is brought down as it was in real life down the pillar there, as you can see. And it does actually, if you look at it, it does affect the overall look. It makes it look a different shape, even though it's not. Obviously it's the same casting, but it is a nice detail. Again, as I say, nice to see. So we get on to the thorny problem of price. I'm doing this video in May 2024, towards the end of May 2024. I've had a quick look on eBay this morning for the purposes of this video, as I normally do. The cheapest one I could find was actually a London Transport one. As I said, there were 11,000 of them produced, so they are pretty commonplace, and as such the prices of them are quite low. And the cheapest one I could find was £4.99 plus £3 postage, so £7.99 all in. The most expensive one of these releases I could find was £24.95 plus £3.50 postage, and that was a Brighton and Hove one. The Grimsby one, prices for ones on eBay were £10.95 with free postage and £12.40 with free postage. The £10.95 one was on bids, but there were no bids on it at the time, so obviously that could go up. But a buy it now one was £12.40 including postage, and that's for the Grimsby version. It is slightly more sought after than the London one. As I say, it was rarer. I had a quick look as well for balance on the Liz Keith website. They had various different ones. The London STL, this one was £6. They had a Tynemouth one for £9. The most expensive one they had was a Liverpool Corporation version, that was £20. And they also had an Atlas version of it. This casting was one of the ones used by Atlas Editions, and they did a version of the Brighton and Hove one, and that was £10 for that, if you just wanted the casting and not necessarily the actual brand name. Again, postage would be on top of those, but that was a general overview of the prices. So somewhere between about £7 or £8 and up to about £25 you're looking at for one of these. All in all, it's a nice model. As I say, it doesn't have the level of detailing of the later ones, but we wouldn't expect it to. It was one of the earlier Corgi OOC releases. And if you put it, you know, at normal viewing distance, it does look pretty reasonable. It's only when you get close up you can see the lack of flush glazing and things and the uneven edges of the paintwork on this Grimsby one. But you know, from normal viewing distance you can't see that. So they are well worth getting if you want a fairly cheap die-cast to put on a model railway or just to put in your display case. Then you could do a lot worse than this one. As always, thank you for watching, take care, and I will see you soon. Bye for now.